not gonna have to pay for it, but I'll find you someone, right? To get the conversation started. Even if it's just leading the cabinet through, this is what you should prepare for. Because I'll be honest, like, I've had some blowback. Like, it's a scary feeling, like when you have blowback and when, you know, you're in positions where you feel your job is at jeopardy. You know, it's a real thing to sort of walk on eggshells knowing that you really want to jump into every conversation and point out every inequity, but you can't, right? Because then you're going to become the squeaky wheel that nobody wants to hear anymore, right? You know? And so what are you going to do? You know, like, you've got to find ways to engage in a conversation. You know, you got to find ways, you got to find critical friends and critical partners that can work alongside you. You know, the things that I did, like, I have to be divisive. I explain myself as a used car salesman all the time, you know, because I have to shift mode over here, depending on who my customer is. You know, most of the people in our organization in roles of leadership who oversee departments or oversee funds, like, most of them are white, you know, or operating from a white perspective, right? So sometimes I got to shift outside of myself. You know, I don't want to do this. I hate it every single day. It's a sacrifice, right? I call it martyrism. You know, it's a sacrifice every day to, like, step outside of my whole soul to show up for you. You know, and you have to believe that I don't want to show up for you in the way I am, but I know I have to show up for you in that way, because otherwise I won't be heard, right? And there will be no progress. You know, it takes a couple of y'all in order to shut down my whole movement. It takes a whole lot of me to get you even to listen, to move on the continuum. So I've had to do some strategic things to do so. One of the most important things I do as a person who firmly believes that most of the time I'm student-centered, like, I started these fantastic student affinity groups in each one of our secondary schools. We call it SOAR, Students Organized Against Racism. They're powerful as hell. They come to school board meetings, protesting things that are not operating well for them in their school buildings. They host symposiums for their staff and their community so that they can keep folks in the conversation about race and about equity. They are advisors to the superintendent and the school board in ways that they're earmarked as the voice of the people. It's fantastic. They work with their building leadership to make sure that y'all hear what is the problem that exists in our lives so that you can make some transformation. And we're still in the process of trying to make those transformations, but I go to them all the time and say, hey, look, I'm a brother who wears a badge that says Bellevue School District. They're the ones who pay my paycheck, right? And by definition, I have a glass ceiling, you know, but I'm gonna use you all, the tools and the resources I have, like to push an agenda in a way that I cannot. Affinity-based parent groups are doing it right now. They are showing all the way up. They're holding the school board accountable to this policy that we're about to pass around racial equity and accountability. The PAVS, Black Parent Group, PAVS stands for Parents Alliance for Black Scholars. Man, they have been to every school board meeting, on every microphone, called the superintendent out to 3 consecutive meetings to explain his position, has individual meetings with school board members. Like, they are doing the most to ensure that they get heard. And if you don't have that as your back, you know, if I'm like sailing in the wind all by myself, there's a strong chance that I'm going to get knocked out of the sky, you know, without the support of some people behind me or continuously lifting me up. And so finding ways to ensure that you're engaging with your global community to lead for the work. And you said something that intrigued me, and something I wish that we had done when we launched our racial equity movement in Bellevue. Your superintendent is not 100% wrong. I believe that most of these folks are operating out of a fear base, but not 100% wrong, because in our district, and I wasn't here at the time, but in our district, we launched this equity movement in secret. Like, shh, don't tell nobody, right? And the philosophy was, I mean, I get it. The philosophy was, like, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna entrench it, and we're gonna root it, and we're gonna spread it across the organization, and we're gonna be unstoppable, right? And we're not gonna tell anybody until it's way too late for them to slow down our movement, right? And then we told somebody, and holy shit, like, I mean, it spiraled so far backwards and out of control. And so the inclusion of the community and all of whomever your stakeholders are, the inclusion of those voices at the table early in the conversation to help you to understand what barriers you're going to have to walk around, or to avoid the roadblocks that are going to come up. It's going to be critical for you. I want to inspire all of you all, if you're not doing a movement now, or even if you're in a movement that is static, you got to go home and have this conversation, with the folks in your district. I mean, you should have this conversation with people in your house too. But at minimum, you should have the conversation with the folks in your district. So I started saying a little while ago that 6 months ago, like, my whole mindset shifted around this work. And I started realizing that I've been in this job for 4.5 years or so, and I know the job that I took. I'm very well aware of the job that I signed up for. And I know you gotta wear like a flak jacket every day because somebody is trying to snipe you and take you out all the time, 100% of the time throughout your workday. That's why I go home. That's why first of all, I collect tequila. So if there's anybody out there who wants to donate to my collection, I have 182 bottles. I'm on the road to 250. So holler at your boy. But it's the reason why, self-promotion. It's the reason why I have to go home and completely decompress. I don't do work when I go home because I can't, right? Because I'm constantly taking bullets all day. I was talking to a friend on the phone the other day. She was like, Shomari, you should write a book. I was like, what should that book be about? And she was like, I don't know, let's talk about you're black and you do these things. I was like, what it really should be about is being a black person who bears the weight of an organization's structure and struggle that they've had for 200 years and is commanded to make a transformation in a short amount of time and metrically proven. Right? That's the book, right? Because it's a really hard job. And 6 months ago, I started to think about who are my systems of support? Who else, especially white people, who else is coming to work with a jacket on, right? Jumping in front of the bullets, because I'm gonna take them regardless, and I'm happy to take them for you, right? But at some point in time, I need you to relieve a little bit of that pressure because enough bullets start to penetrate those jackets, right? It penetrates your soul. How much of your soul are you giving away to this work? You have to think about that. You have to think about the people who you put in these roles. It's not easy to do the job and then we shove on to them our problems that we can take responsibility for. Shomari, I got this black kid. I'm the black kid, dude? Come on, man. Even in our schools, right? Teachers in classrooms, this kid who someone probably erroneously wrote an IEP for because they, were a little bit too, itchy in their seat, because they're black, and they're transferring schools, they're going to be placed into the classroom with the black person. What's that about? That's an issue, right? I mean, it's an equity issue. Why can't white people handle, working with black people, black children? Why are 5th grade teachers afraid of our blackboards, really? And because they're afraid, they get disproportionately disciplined. I don't have anything to do with you. I keep starting this 6 months ago thing and I just spiral out of control. 6 months ago, when I started looking at who are the people who are jumping in front of these bullets, and I didn't see a whole lot of people there, especially people who were positionally in authority, I decided I'm just going to do it for myself, right? And I've been listening to Glenn Singleton for years, right? And we work with PEG, Pacific Education Group, in our organization. And he said something every year that didn't click until 6 months ago. He's like, sometimes you just have to understand that your job is on the line every day. And you should operate from that perspective. You should kick ass so hard every day for that student who is otherwise underserved that your job is on the line. You're pushing somebody so far to their limit that your job is on the line. And I thought about that. 6 months ago, I decided that I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. Sometimes I don't step in when I should step in. Sometimes I choose my battles very carefully, it's, stepping over landmines, trying to avoid it. Sometimes I'm not doing enough, and I'm the racial equity director, and I'm doing a lot. So I'm wondering, what aren't you doing? And where are your blind spots? And what do you need? And how can you get it? Who are your critical friends who are going to step to you like I am and say, you're all into your whiteness right now? And this is what this means. Who's doing that for you? They don't even have to be a person of color. I see a lot of thinkers, and I want to know what's coming up for you right now.
My question is, how are you building alliances with the opposition? Because even within the block of opposition, there, from your faith-based perspective, there are those who should be able to pull around so that you have allies. Are there any individuals that are in the opposition who convert to be supportive of what should be justice?
Yeah, we have to be real intentional about that. Initially, because the attack was towards me specifically for my role in equity. And so a tiny bit of the backstory, we have a robust, affluent immigrant Chinese community who hates the idea of racial equity because they think that because they are at the top of what they think is the proverbial pyramid in every category, that if we start looking at that real closely, we're going to be pulling away resources and opportunities for them. It's not the truth. But they came hard. I mean, they galvanized in a way that I didn't even see MLK do, man. They got technology now. Right? I mean, they got people on WeChat that are like 500, 1,000 plus. Yes, technology, right? And in our community, they're leading in technology too because of Microsoft and Boeing and Amazon, et cetera, right? And so we have a couple of allies within the group. We have a couple of allies that were a part of the resistance who are just on the cusp enough to want to listen. The problem is we have a whole bunch of people on the spectrum. Of the opposers, we've got the super right, who they've got web pages they've now formed at 501c3 and 4 to combat what it is that we're doing. Oh, real talk, man, let's go. It's tough, Seattle is a really interesting city. And we have to find people within, but oftentimes what we find is, based on the context of the community where many of them have come from, there's a person who's pulling the strings, right? There's someone who's pulling the strings of all the groups and reinforcing with force. Nah, brother, you off track. So we invited this one Chinese immigrant due to a committee, the Equity Advisory Group, so we can finalize the verbiage on our racial equity policy that he was vehemently against, but then came around to acceptance until he told his community. And he came back the next week with a statement that was completely contradictory to all his participation that he had gave over the course of 2-3 months. It's interesting. So we're walking a fine line trying to figure this out. We're gonna lose some people along the way, and that's okay. I advise that to also all those people who are in company positions who have the finger on the pulse of what's happening in education across the nation, right? You have to take a stake in what you stand for. Sometimes you might lose a client. That's all right, right? Because that client didn't stand for what we stood for anyway. What do we stand for? I ain't just talking to educators, right? What do you stand for in the role that you play in your company, your organization, your business, right? And how do you set a stake in the ground so that folks know that you're all about this business, right? And this is the people we want to work with, and we might in some way try to bring you along with us. It's interesting, trying to get people who are part of the resistance. I always say that there's this 25-50-25 rule, almost in every group, right? 25% of the people in whatever group it is that you're working with are firm believers. They got your back no matter what. You can do no wrong. 50% of the people you're going to work with, imagine dropping racial equity work into your district. 50% of the people are going to be someone in this ambiguous middle. I want to believe it, I'm not 100% sure, I'm a little nervous about doing it, but maybe it'll be okay, right? And they just need a lot of coaching, a lot of hand-holding. And then there's this 25% that are like, I'm good. And sometimes we're going to lose some of those 25%. You're going to have to be prepared for that, and that's okay. You got to keep it pushing. Because you know why? We're in here in service of our babies. Every single day. Please keep that in the center. I'm wrapped. I'm sorry.
Everyone, please.